The mining colony was quiet at first. Far from Earth, it stood on a rocky planet that had little beauty but held valuable minerals deep inside. People came here for work, not for comfort. The sky was often dark with dust, and the air was thin. But still life went on. Arun, a simple worker, was among them. He was not a soldier, not a leader, and not a scientist. He was just a man who worked with machines and carried heavy loads from one station to another. His days were plain, his nights were long, and he often dreamed of returning home. But that day was different. That day the alarms sounded, the sirens cut through the colony like knives. Red lights flashed across metal walls. People shouted and ran, unsure what was happening. Arun dropped his tools and looked up at the sky. He saw shapes above the clouds, moving like shadows of monsters. They were not human ships. Their forms were sharp, curved, and alive with strange colors that shimmered in the dust-filled air. "Aliens," someone cried. The word sent fear across the colony. Explosions shook the ground. Buildings cracked and fell. Soldiers fired from towers, but their weapons looked small against the massive crafts that hovered above. The people ran toward evacuation ships, but not everyone could reach them. Arun tried to follow, but the wave of panic separated him from the crowd. He found himself alone in a collapsing street. Smoke rose around him. Metal beams fell from broken roofs. The sound of engines thundered overhead. He coughed and stumbled, searching for safety. That was when he noticed an opening in the ground. It was an old tunnel, part of the mining network. Without thinking, Arun climbed down into it. Dust filled his lungs, but at least it hid him from the chaos above. He followed the tunnel deeper, guided only by the faint glow of his wristlight. The deeper he went, the stranger it became. The walls were not only stone, but carved with markings he had never seen before. Lines, circles, and shapes stretched along the rock, glowing faintly as if they remembered an old power. Arun slowed, puzzled. Who carved these? Miners never wasted time on designs. The tunnel stretched farther until the ground shook again, harder this time. A crack opened behind him, sealing the way back. Arun had no choice but to go forward. He walked for what felt like hours until he reached a vast chamber. His light revealed a structure that was not human at all. It was part of a ship, silver and black, built into the rock itself. Arun's heart raced. Somehow the tunnel had led him directly into the alien vessel. The chamber was tall, with shining walls that curved upward like the ribs of a giant creature. Strange lights pulsed along the ceiling, and the air smelled heavy, mixed with unknown scents. At the center was a throne-like platform, glowing with power, and on that platform stood the alien queen. She was taller than any human. Her form was covered in silver armor that seemed grown, not built. Her eyes were large and bright, filled with a light that cut into Arun's soul. Around her stood many alien guards, their bodies sharp and dangerous, holding weapons that hummed with energy. Arun froze. His breath caught in his chest. He thought this was the end. He was a worker with no weapon, no strength to fight. He expected the queen to command his death. But then something happened that he could never have imagined. The alien queen looked directly at him. Her glowing eyes locked on his small human figure. The room went silent. Even the humming of the guards' weapons seemed to fade. And then, slowly, the queen crouched down before him. Arun's eyes widened. He could not believe what he saw. The queen, powerful and terrifying, lowered herself as if in respect. Her long arms touched the ground, and her head bowed slightly. The guards shifted uneasily but did not move. They looked at each other with confusion, waiting for orders that never came. Arun's heart pounded louder than the explosions outside. Why was she doing this? Why him? He was no hero, no leader, no chosen one. He was just Arun, a miner who wanted to survive. The queen remained still, crouched low, her glowing eyes never leaving his. Arun felt something stir in his chest, a strange mix of fear and wonder. He remembered stories his grandfather once told him, tales of ancient visitors who came from the stars long before humans built cities. They were said to bow before certain people, though no one believed those old tales. Now, standing in the heart of an alien ship, Arun wondered if those stories had been true all along. The silence pressed heavy on him. His knees felt weak, and his mind spun with questions. He wanted to run, but his body would not move. He wanted to speak, but no words came. He only stood there, a lone human before an alien queen who treated him as something more than he understood. At that moment, Arun knew his life would never return to what it was. The queen's gesture was not a mistake. It carried meaning, though he could not yet grasp it, and deep inside, a truth began to form. Whatever this meant, it was bigger than the mining colony. It's bigger than Earth itself. The alien queen had seen him, and for reasons still hidden in shadows, she had chosen to kneel. Arun stood frozen as the alien queen crouched before him. The air inside the chamber felt heavy, as if the entire ship itself was holding its breath. The alien guards stayed still, their glowing weapons lowered but not dismissed. Their eyes flicked between their queen and the human who had stumbled into their sacred hall. Arun's mind spun. He wanted to believe it was some kind of trick, yet the queen's posture was clear. This was not an act of mockery. It was respect or something close to it. He swallowed hard. His hands trembled at his sides. He did not know whether to bow in return, to speak, or to run. He was just a miner, a man who fixed broken drills and carried boxes of stone. What was he supposed to do when the most powerful being in the room was kneeling to him? The silence dragged on until Arun whispered, his voice cracking, "Why?" The queen tilted her head slightly, as if she had heard him, even though he spoke in his own tongue. Her eyes glowed brighter. Suddenly Arun felt a pressure in his mind, not painful but strange, like a soft wave of thought brushing against his own. Images flickered in his head, mountains, stars, caves filled with firelight, and figures that looked human but were older, dressed in skins and holding simple tools. Arun gasped. The vision faded quickly, but it left a mark. The queen had shown him something from long ago, something that felt almost familiar. He stumbled back, but the guards did not stop him. They only waited, restless, as if confused by their queen's choice. One guard, taller than the others, made a sharp sound in its throat. It seemed like a question, or maybe a protest. But the queen raised her hand, and the guard fell silent. Arun pressed his palm against his chest, trying to calm his racing heart. He remembered something his grandfather once told him during quiet nights on Earth. Old tales, passed down by storytellers, spoke of visitors who came from the sky in ages long forgotten. They were said to bow before certain humans, though no one believed such things. They were myths, nothing more. Arun had laughed at them when he was younger, but now, here in this alien ship, facing a queen who bowed before him, he could no longer laugh. The queen rose slowly, towering once again, but she did not act with anger. Instead, she stepped closer, her movements smooth and graceful. Her presence filled the chamber, yet her eyes never left his. Arun's knees trembled, but he held his ground. The queen extended one hand. It was long, with shining armor that looked grown rather than built. She did not strike him. She only pointed toward the carvings on the wall. Arun turned and looked again. The markings glowed faintly in the dim light. Circles, lines, and strange shapes covered the walls like a map. At first they seemed random, but when Arun focused, he realized some of them looked almost like human drawings he had seen in history books. Simple figures, stick-like, holding spears and fire. His mouth went dry. Could humans and these aliens have met before? Thousands of years ago? The queen stepped beside him. For a moment she stood so close he could hear the quiet hum of her armor. She touched the wall with her long hand, and the carvings flared brighter. Arun watched as the symbols shifted, changing before his eyes. The shapes moved into a pattern that showed two figures, one like a human, one like the alien queen. They faced each other, hands outstretched, as if in a pact. Arun stared. His chest tightened. The queen turned her gaze back to him, waiting for his reaction. Arun whispered again, "You know us." She gave no sound, but he felt another soft wave in his mind. This time, it was clearer. He saw visions of humans from ancient times standing before beings like her. He saw respect, not war. He saw fire shared, tools exchanged, and a bond created. Then the vision shattered into chaos storms, broken stones, and darkness. The connection had been lost long ago. Arun's breath caught. His heart hammered against his ribs. The queen was not showing him conquest. She was showing him memory. The guards shifted again. Some looked uneasy, others almost angry. They did not understand why their leader knelt to a weak human miner. To them, Arun was nothing. But the queen's actions were firm. Arun realized something frightening and strange at the same time. Whatever the queen saw in him, it was not by accident. He was part of something older than he could imagine. The ground shook suddenly as another explosion rocked the ship. Dust rained from above. Arun staggered, almost falling. He knew Earth's soldiers were still fighting outside, still trying to push back the alien fleet. They had no idea he was here, standing face to face with the queen herself. For a moment, Arun thought the queen might leave, might return to battle, but she did not. Instead, she motioned to her guards. With swift movements, they surrounded him, but not with weapons raised. They formed a circle of protection. The queen gestured, and Arun understood. She wanted him to follow. His legs felt heavy, but he walked forward, step by step, into the heart of the alien vessel. The corridors glowed with shifting colors, walls alive with strange energy. The guards moved like shadows around him, silent and watchful. Arun's thoughts swirled. He remembered his colony, the people running for their lives, the ships trying to escape. He should have been among them. Instead, he was here, chosen or mistaken for something far beyond his simple life. The queen led him deeper until they reached another chamber. This one was smaller but filled with light. At its center was a tall pillar, covered with more carvings. Arun's eyes widened. These carvings were clearer. Some looked almost exactly like human cave art. Figures hunted animals, built fires, raised their hands to the sky. The queen placed her hand on the pillar. It glowed bright, filling the room with a warm light. Arun felt another wave in his mind. Images of stars filled his vision, countless worlds spinning in endless space. Then he saw Earth, small but shining. The queen turned toward him and crouched again, this time slower, more deliberate. Her glowing eyes locked onto his, and Arun realized this was no mistake. She saw him as something important, maybe even as a key to a promise her people had once made. Arun's throat tightened. He wanted to shout that he was no leader, no chosen one. He was just Arun, a miner lost in a war. But the queen's eyes told him there was no going back. The meaning was clear. Even without words, the aliens had not come only for war. They had come searching for something, and somehow they'd found it in him. Arun followed the alien queen through the glowing corridors of the great ship. The guards surrounded him, moving with silent steps. Their tall, sharp forms looked dangerous, yet none of them touched him. He was not a prisoner, but he was not free either. The queen led him to another chamber. This one was wide and filled with strange crystal pillars that pulsed with soft light. The air was warmer here, and Arun felt a quiet hum deep in his chest. As if the room itself was alive, at the center stood a round table made of black stone. The surface was carved with markings, some alien, some that looked shockingly human. Circles, lines, and stick figures stretched across it, telling a story without words. Arun stepped closer. His hand hovered above the carvings. He could almost feel them pulling at him like magnets drawing metal. He whispered to himself, "This is not possible." The queen moved beside him. She did not speak with her mouth, but once again he felt a soft wave in his mind. Images appeared old, ancient, older than any history book. He saw humans dressed in animal skins, standing on hills under wide skies. He saw alien figures, tall and shining, descending from the heavens. The two groups met in peace. Fire was shared, tools exchanged, and bonds formed. The humans bowed, but then, in a shocking turn, the aliens bowed back. The vision shifted. Darkness swept across the scene. Storms rose, mountains cracked, and the bond was broken. The visitors left, and humanity was left alone. The images faded, and Arun stumbled back. His heart raced. He looked at the queen, and she only watched him, her glowing eyes calm and certain. Arun finally found his voice. You knew us. Long ago, you made a pact with humans. The queen tilted her head slightly as if confirming his words. But why me? Arun asked. I'm no leader. I'm no warrior. I'm just a miner. The queen stepped closer and touched the table. The carvings glowed brighter. A new image appeared, one human figure standing apart from the others, a figure marked with light. The queen then pointed at Arun, her long fingers steady and clear. Arun's chest tightened. He shook his head. No, that cannot be me. You have made a mistake. But deep inside, he remembered again his grandfather's words. Old stories told by firelight, of chosen people who carried the memory of the first pact. He had always laughed at them, but now, here on this alien ship, those words returned with sharp clarity. Before Arun could argue further, the chamber doors opened. A group of alien leaders entered. They were dressed differently from the guards, their armor darker, their faces sharper. They carried themselves with pride and suspicion. Their eyes narrowed at Arun. One of them spoke in a low, humming language. Arun could not understand the words, but the tone was clear. They did not approve. The queen raised her hand and answered in the same language, her voice strong and commanding. The chamber filled with echoes as the two sides exchanged words. Arun stood silently, his palms sweating, unable to follow the argument. Then the tall alien leader pointed directly at him. The guards stiffened. Arun felt the air grow heavy. The queen replied with firmness, her eyes glowing brighter. Finally, the leader gave a slow nod. Though his body was tense, the meaning reached Aaron through the queen's presence in his mind. He understood even without words. They were not convinced. They wanted proof. Arun would have to show them that he was worthy of the queen's recognition. His stomach turned cold. What do you mean, proof? He whispered, though no one answered him. The aliens moved quickly. The crystal pillars shifted, and the floor of the chamber began to change. Panels opened, forming a path that led into another room. The queen motioned for Arun to follow. Her eyes told him this was not a punishment. This was a trial. Arun's legs shook as he walked. His steps echoed against the strange metal. The path ended at a round arena-like space. The walls rose high, glowing faintly. At the center stood three objects, a sharp alien blade, glowing crystal sphere, and a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Arun looked at them with confusion. The queen's voice touched his mind again. The trial was not of strength but of choice. The blade represented power. The sphere represented knowledge. The bundle represented life. He could only choose one. Arun stared at the three objects. His hands trembled. He thought of his colony, his people running, the soldiers fighting. If he chose the blade, maybe the aliens would see humans as strong warriors. If he chose the sphere, maybe they would see humans as clever thinkers. But the bundle called to him most. He stepped forward and gently unwrapped it. Inside was a small alien creature, young and fragile. Its eyes blinked weakly, and it let out a soft sound like a cry. Arun's chest ached. Without thinking, he lifted the small creature and held it close. Life, he whispered. I choose life. The queen's eyes glowed with pride. The alien leaders exchanged sharp glances, but they could not deny what they saw. The arena shifted again. This time, visions filled the walls, images of Arun standing between humans and aliens. Not as a fighter or a scholar, but as a bridge. Arun's heart pounded. He did not understand fully, but the choice felt right. The trial ended, and the queen led him back to the chamber. The alien leaders bowed their heads slightly, not to him. But in acknowledgement of the queen's decision, Arun felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. He was no longer just a miner lost in a war. He had been drawn into something ancient, something greater than himself, and though fear still gripped him, a quiet strength stirred inside. Whatever bond had been broken long ago, he now carried the chance to restore it. The chamber felt quieter after the trial, but Arun's heart was still loud inside his chest. He could not forget the moment when he chose the bundle of life over the blade and the sphere. The small creature's weight, soft and trembling, still lingered in his arms even though it was no longer there. The alien queen had taken it back, holding it with a kind of respect before giving it to her attendants. Now Arun walked beside her once more, alien guards following close. He tried to make sense of what had happened. He was still just a minor, but the aliens had tested him as if he were something greater. He did not know if he had passed in their eyes. Yet he felt the queen's presence beside him like a shield. The ship trembled again. Explosions sounded faintly through the walls. Earth's soldiers were still fighting outside, still believing the aliens had come only to conquer. Arun thought of them and felt a sharp pull of worry. They were risking their lives, and they had no idea that inside this ship, an entirely different battle was taking place. The queen stopped at a wide door made of silver metal. It slid open, revealing a hall filled with alien leaders, the council he had seen before. They stood in a circle, tall and proud, their glowing eyes fixed on him. Their armor reflected the light like water. Their voices hummed in low tones that carried weight. The queen stepped into the center, and Arun followed reluctantly. His palms were damp and his throat felt dry. He knew this was no simple meeting. This was judgment. The council leader spoke first in the alien tongue, his voice sharp like a blade. Arun could not understand the words, but the tone was filled with challenge. He pointed toward Arun, then toward the stars outside, as if demanding proof that this human deserved the queen's respect. The queen answered firmly, her voice steady and commanding. Her words flowed like music, and even though Arun could not follow them, he felt her strength. She raised her arm, pointing at him, and the room glowed faintly with her power. Again, Arun felt that wave in his mind. This time, instead of visions of the past, he saw something new. He saw Earth as it was now, its cities, its people, its struggles. He saw the mining colony where he had lived, with workers like him laboring for survival. He saw soldiers, farmers, and children. Ordinary lives, yet filled with spirit. The queen was showing the council what she had seen in humanity's strength, not of weapons, but of heart. The council leader shook his head. His voice rose, almost angry. The guards tensed, but the queen stood firm. Arun understood without words. They were not convinced. They wanted more. The queen turned to him, her eyes glowing brighter. Another wave filled his mind, guiding him. He understood what she wanted. He had to speak. Ern's knees felt weak. He was standing before beings who could end him in a breath, and yet he was expected to speak for all of humanity. He closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and then forced himself to raise his head. "I don't know why you see me as important," he said, his voice shaking. "I am no leader. I am no warrior. I am just a miner. But if you wish to know what makes humans worthy, it is not our power or our knowledge. It is that we keep going. Even when everything is against us, we keep fighting, we keep living, we keep protecting each other. That is what makes us human." His words echoed in the silent chamber. He thought they sounded weak, but he had nothing else to give. The council murmured in their strange language. Some looked doubtful, others thoughtful. The leader's eyes narrowed, as if weighing Arun's words against the queen's vision. Then the queen stepped closer to Arun and did something that silenced the hall. She crouched once more before him, lowering herself in front of the council. The sight was powerful, an alien queen bowing before a human miner. The council gasped, their glowing eyes wide. Even the leader hesitated. The meaning was undeniable. She was placing her honor on him. The chamber filled with low humming voices as the council debated. Arun stood frozen, unsure if he had brought peace or disaster. His heart pounded and sweat dripped from his forehead. At last the leader raised his hand. The voices stopped. He looked at Arun for a long moment, then lowered his head slightly, not a bow, but a gesture of acceptance. The tension in Arun's body released in a rush. He nearly collapsed from relief. The queen rose again, her eyes softer now, and for the first time, Arun felt her mind not as a wave of visions, but as a single clear message. "You chose life," she whispered in his thoughts. That is why you are worthy. Arun blinked, stunned. His chest ached with emotion. He wanted to believe her words, but doubt still lingered. Still, he had no choice but to accept what had happened. The meeting ended, and the council withdrew, leaving the queen and her guards with him. Arun followed her through the corridors once more. Outside, the battle still raged. He could hear the distant rumble of human weapons striking against alien shields. He thought of his people again. They were fighting with all their might, believing the aliens were only enemies. They did not know that inside this ship, the fate of the war had shifted. The queen stopped once more at a wide window that looked out over the planet. From here, Arun could see the colony below, scarred by smoke and fire. His chest tightened at the sight. The queen stood beside him, silent but steady. Arun felt her thoughts again, not words but feelings. She was asking him a question. Would he stand as the bridge between their worlds? Arun did not answer right away. He thought of the miners, the workers, the families who had fled. He thought of his grandfather's stories and of the small creature he had saved. He thought of the queen crouching before him, placing her trust in a simple human. At last, he nodded slowly. I will try, he whispered. The queen's glowing eyes softened again. She placed her long hand against the glass, pointing toward the stars. Arun understood. This was not just about saving his colony. It was about something far greater. Humanity's place in the universe was about to change. The silence of the ship pressed heavy on Arun as he stood beside the alien queen, looking out at the burning colony below. The smoke from broken towers rose like dark fingers into the sky. The ground trembled with every blast of human weapons and every strike from alien ships. It was war. But here inside the queen's vessel, there was no fighting. There was only waiting. Arun's thoughts twisted in circles. The queen wanted him to be a bridge between two worlds, but how could he, a miner with no power, speak for all of humanity? He clenched his fists and whispered to himself, I'm not ready. Yet the queen had chosen him, and her choice could not be ignored. The queen raised her hand, and Arun felt another wave of thought enter his mind. This time it was calm, like a stream of water. He saw visions of the alien people watching him, waiting for his answer. He saw his own people, desperate and fighting below, unaware of what had happened inside this ship. And he saw something more: the future, a road that split into two paths. One was filled with endless war, fire, and ruin. The other was filled with ships traveling together, humans and aliens side by side, not as enemies but as allies. The vision faded, and Arun gasped for air. His legs felt weak, but his heart grew firm. He could not turn away. Then show me what I must do, he said softly. The queen nodded, her glowing eyes steady. She gave a command in her humming voice, and the guards moved quickly. They opened the great doors of the chamber, and for the first time since his capture, Arun saw a communication platform. At its center was a tall pillar surrounded by rings of light. Symbols danced across its surface, forming messages too complex for him to read. The queen pointed to it. Arun understood. This was how he would speak. His breath shook as he stepped onto the platform. The rings of light rose around him, scanning him, making his image stretch far beyond the walls of the ship. He realized with shock that the system was broadcasting him not only to the alien fleet, but also to Earth's soldiers outside. Both sides would hear his words. Arun's knees trembled, but he forced himself to stand tall. He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering courage. Then he spoke. My name is Arun. I am not a leader. I am not a warrior. I am a miner. But I stand here because your queen has seen something in me, something she says belongs to all humans. I do not understand why she chose me, but I know this. We do not need to fight each other. Not today. His voice echoed, carried by the alien system. He continued, each word stronger than the last. Humans are not the strongest. We are not the smartest. But we are the ones who keep going. We fall, we rise, and we try again. We protect our families. We choose life even when it is easier to choose destruction. That is what makes us who we are. If you came here to test us, then let this be your answer. We do not bow to fear. We bow only to hope." Silence followed his words. For a long moment, nothing moved. Arun's heart pounded as he feared no one believed him. But then, slowly, something began to happen. The alien ships outside stopped firing. Their weapons dimmed, their formations shifting. The human soldiers on the ground, confused by the sudden pause, held their fire too. The battlefield grew quiet, like a storm breaking into calm inside the ship. The alien council entered the chamber once more. They looked at Arun with eyes that no longer burned with anger, but with something close to respect. The leader stepped forward, his head tilted slightly down, not a bow, but a sign of acknowledgement. Then, before all of them, the alien queen crouched again. Her tall body lowered until her head was level with Arun's chest. This time it was not only in private, it was in front of the council, the guards, and the watching fleet. The meaning was clear. The queen was declaring him the rightful heir of the ancient pact. Arun felt his chest tighten. He wanted to deny it, to step back, and shout that they had chosen the wrong man. But he saw the eyes of the aliens watching, and he felt the weight of humanity on his shoulders. He could not run slowly with trembling hands. He placed his palm over his chest and nodded. The chamber erupted in sound. The council struck their staffs against the ground, creating a rhythm that echoed through the ship. The guards lowered their weapons fully. The queen rose again, her eyes bright, and for the first time, Arun thought he saw something close to a smile. Outside, the alien fleet pulled back. Ships turned away from the colony, their weapons dark. Humanity's soldiers watched in stunned silence as their enemies retreated. Not from defeat, but from respect. Arun stood quietly, his mind still struggling to accept what had happened. He had not fought a battle, he had not commanded an army, and yet somehow he had ended a war. The queen touched his shoulder gently with her long hand. In his mind came one last wave of thought, clear and strong. "You are the bridge. Do not forget." Arun closed his eyes and breathed deeply. He did not feel like a hero. He did not feel like a king. He felt like a man who had been given a burden too heavy to carry. Yet he also felt a spark of hope. He looked out at the stars through the wide window of the ship. For the first time, they did not seem far or cold. They seemed close, alive, waiting for what came next. Humanity had been tested, and through him it had answered. And so began a new era not of war, but of alliance, not of fear, but of courage. The alien queen had bowed, and the universe had listened, and Arun, once a miner forgotten on a distant colony, became the name whispered across both worlds as the man who carried the crown of humankind in gold, but in spirit.